5-year-old. She once suffered lead encephalopathy, a serious lead poisoning disease.
She'd gotten quite sick and then presented having ceased convulsions.
Well, she began walking. She was like picking up everything she picks up, she puts in her mouth. And up until the time that she became sick, it was just like, and it had gotten worse. She like had a craving for things, dirt, dust, in the house and out of the house, I had heard of lead, but I had no knowledge, of the damage and so that does to children. And I've never seen, children that had lead poisoning before.
The Public Health Service estimates 3 million children have toxic levels of lead in their blood. But children aren't the only ones who get from exposure to toxic material. 9 million adults also have unacceptable blood lead levels.
As the poisoning started to progress, I was having a lot of problems with irritability. I had no appetite. I broke out with a lot of hives, irritability, as I said, very fatigued in the late afternoons, bone in my arm, my legs starting to hurt. No libido, and some sort of lost memory.
Scientists have known dangers of lead poisoning for centuries. We now know that lead can be passed from one generation to next during pregnancy. That the presence of lead in a baby's blood or bones before or after birth can cause irreparable damage to physical, emotional, and intellectual development. Exposure to a low level of lead can leave a child scarred for life.
We have indeed made a whole generation of Americans a little bit stirred because they got poisoning. And the fact that they don't know how much it has blunted their potential is a tragedy in itself.
Hello, I'm Kent Manahan. Today we can be thankful that the phased reduction of lead in gasoline has lowered the average American blood lead level by 38% in the past decade. New Jersey is the most industrial state in the country, and lead remains the second most prevalent chemical in use here today. It's in our soil, our water, the food we eat, and the air we breathe. A national health survey shows that millions of American children now carry unacceptable levels of lead in their bodies. Lead is part of the national environment. It's believed the fall of Rome was due in part to lead poisoning. The ancient Romans ingested large amounts of the metal through their leaded water pipes and drinking vessels. Many became sterile. In the past, poisoning was considered a public health hazard for inner city children who lived in dilapidated housing and ate ships. Children who eventually wound up in the hospital room having seizures or in coma. It's like if you took hold, most of the participants would tell you that lead poisoning is not a serious health threat today. Dr. Steve Marcus, director of the New Jersey Poison Control Center, knows differently.
I can't begin to tell you the number of times you get a telephone call from a doctor or some industrial hygienist that says this worker's place and such and such a symptom. They say it sounds like it could be lead poisoning. They say, well, I didn't think lead poisoning existed anymore.
The perception that lead poisoning is a problem of the past can be a deadly misconception. The fact is, lead in the workplace still play a major role in the overall number of lead poison cases that develop every year. Painters, sanders, automotive workers, and those who work in indoor firing range are at risk. Aaron S. Seville, a New York City police detective, trains emergency officers in the use of rifles and handguns, was poisoned on the job.
Really made me believe and I got stuck here at the range. I started for the car went dead, and I told my buddy, I'm my father for his son, and what he did was he went to the store, picked up a star, came over here, mine off, put a one on, and I started fighting with him. Here it is, he's going his way, and he calls me, why are you so irritable? And that's when I actually believed for the first time that, I had been affected by it. Officer Seville was, I believe at the time, a pistol instructor. and the ventilation system in the firing range was not operating as it should have, and so the indoor lead concentration became high. The firing cap of a bullet has a lead compound in it. That little puff of smoke you see when the gun is fired contains lead, and so men who work the firing range, who are around this kind of smoke all day long, do get exposed to high levels of lead in indoor firing range.
Interior base paint was banned as tree in 1977, but a 1911 census found that more than 40 million houses across the United States were painted before World War II. They were painted with lead paint. As a result, 10 million people live, work in houses threatened by the business. All what I was scarred industry men, women in construction and in marine industry are still lead because the government not yet banned lead in all exterior paints.
Well, it's a problem now, and a lot of what we've solved some of the problems to exposure to lead, with the phase of lead paint for residential structures, and phase down lead gasoline. There's no timetable for the phase of lead in marine application or use in bridges. Will be when the realization is that these additional unacceptable sources of lead and can be shown that these are also exposure sources to children that are called health effects, unhelpful health effects. Then the probe will be put into fit out lead and other use.
But the danger of lead poisoning is not confined to dilapidated housing. It enters the industrial working environment too. Lead poisoning knows no economic or professional boundaries. A phenomenon, sometimes called yuppie lead poisoning, has developed as young professionals buy up homes in older neighborhoods. Connie Klein and F. Salzberg bought brownstone in the city, moved in with their daughter cousin. They couldn't wait to start living. As they worked, they were unknowingly breathing lead particles. Lead was the furthest thing from their minds. They didn't know the importance of proper lead removal. After months of work, their home was beautiful, but their person was poisoned.
We've come to believe now it's mostly due to dust from radiating. For example, if we down a wall or for a ceiling to come down the top floor, there would be dust in the air. We'd clean up and dispose the garbage, but there's lingering dust, even if it was from part of the house. And you keep doors closed, dust keeps you out, and for a long time. It's really not safe to renovate the same house. We've come to learn with children around. I mean, you can renovate, you seal with plastic, but you're walking out, your shoes will, your body will come out. And found that dust is so insidious, sealing with tape, I don't even think it would. Well, people do that, and it might, okay, I say that's taking a chance. Old houses are beautiful, we love old houses, but it doesn't renovate one. It doesn't exclude young ones.
Kristen was diagnosed with lead poisoning several years ago.
When we found out person had lead, the doctor told us, well, I think she might have lead. And I said, I know where this comes from. I've lived for this before. I didn't. She didn't think of it.
But Connie and Eric are informed now, and she's working to get the word out to others.
Trying to get education about lead out is important to us now. So we talk to as many people we can, and I've joined an advisory group in the Jersey City Forum to try and fight lead, because ignorance about lead poisoning is everybody thinks it's someone else's problem, it's not a problem. And the problem with lead poisoning is you don't see the effects of lead poisoning unless a kid is so sick that it's really very extremely dangerous. But low levels of lead don't have physical effects. They're still very dangerous and cause permanent brain damage. But people know this, and it's easy to say, my kid looks fine, my kid's all right, I don't have a problem, even if I live in a home.
But the danger isn't only in the interior. On some homes, it's outside too. Its exterior lead-based paint decays, lead chips make their way into the soil where they're invisible. Sometimes deteriorating paint in the soil is ingested by children who come in contact with dirt while playing. Another culprit, lead gasoline. If you drive an old car, you use it. Lead gas is emitted into the air, eventually settles in our soil as well. It's important to be aware of this danger and to test the soil around your home for the presence of lead. Another, pesticides. For years, lead arsenate has been used as a pesticide to fruit ripen. Deadly pesticide seeps into the ground and remains in the fruit, particularly grapefruit. That's why it's important to wash fruit carefully. Most municipal waters contain lead, but surface pipes and residential plumbing do. Mothers, it's important to remember when you make your baby bottle, lead can be in the first ball of water. The local health department can ask questions about how to have your water tested for lead. Improperly glazed pottery has been a source of lead intoxication. A Seattle couple was severely poisoned drinking coffee day after day from their hand-painted Italian mugs. They decided to market it so that others could test ceramic dishes for lead. Testing dishes and mugs is a good idea, particularly if they're imported from countries where lead is still used in ceramic pieces.
We have seen people from amateur sculptors that were dealing with the firing of their artwork to small cottage industry that was involved with manufacturing of potterware as well, all the way up to the men's smelters and laundry work, and every conceivable variation on the theme in between people that go through their hobbies as well. Taking care of people that work making stained glass windows, soldering the piece in between the glass, and ended up spending time on lead purpose to remove the layers from that process. We've had people that manufacture bullets as a hobby, manufacturing sinkers as a hobby, got lead poisoning.
Children, like a page we read earlier, sometimes lead poisoning in sweet-tasting peps. Lee's parents never realized dangers of her eating pancakes. Non-items in the mouth is called pica. It's very common in children under the age of 5. The years between birth and age 3 are the most important in the physical and intellectual development of a child. As a result, the poisoning that occurs in this period can permanently damage a child's ability to learn. When Lily was admitted to the hospital having seizures, her blood lead levels found to be 50 times higher than national average, and about 20 times higher than the level recommended for treatment.
Now, if you bring lead along, a child at the age of 12 and 13, 14 has learned 2 wires each. It's putting glue in the gas tank of an engine. It's slowed down in this selected way, different part of the process. Now, if you continue that slowing over a period of several months, then by the time you come out the other end, you've already gummed up the learning loss for that child. And Westween is an irreversible thing, not something you can turn the clock on. Lead interfering with brain function during a period of time interferes, therefore, with acquisition of language. And the closest link to future intelligence is acquisition of language. So you have a double whammy. You have a child that is undergoing a tremendous amount of development in that period of time. Also at the state where he explores his environment, his mouth. And so therefore he's more likely to something into his mouth. And if there's lead around, he's more likely to lead into his mouth and then get damaged at the time where he is undergoing this incredible amount of development. So that the child is at a tremendous risk for future defect because of a little window of vulnerability between about a year and 3 years of age.
Dr. Marcus adds that lead is accumulative. The longer it's in a child's system, the more likely it causes damage. As a result, lead one ingests as a child stays with the person and continues to expose the body for at least 20 to 30 years.
All is toxic. There is not a single base system, there's not a single enzyme within either the human body or, for that matter, animal we know of, that requires lead. Lead is always considered a contaminant. There is just about no level of lead that any individual have that we cannot demonstrate that it's causing some problem.
After lead ingest or inhaled, it makes its way into blood where it's most accessible to the rest of the body and where it does the most damage. But eventually, lead makes way into bone, and there it's stored, sometimes for years undetected. During pregnancy, a woman's hormones can cause the lead in her bones to mobilize, re-enter bloodstream, where it's easily passed to the newborn child through the umbilical cord. A newborn's lead level will reflect its mother's. If the mother's lead level is significant at the critical stage of a baby's development, there is a possibility the child will suffer birth defect.
There often is question about what exactly is the poisoning and how detrimental it is to children. I think it's important that people recognize that as we've become sophisticated over the past 3 decades, people have realized that there are a wide range of effects of lead poisoning, and that really no level of lead is safe for children. There is an unfortunate tendency, and it's easy to understand why it exists, to oversimplify the lead problem and think of it exclusively in terms of IQ point. People have demonstrated fairly conclusively a wide range of dysfunctional behaviors that go along with lead poisoning. So that I think we trivialize the problem when we get merely in terms of IQ points, although as parents none of us want our children to lose to 6 IQ points, which some studies have demonstrated what to be the effect even low levels of lead.
The teachers rate her lead children as more distractible in the classroom, less able to follow directions, more impulsive, higher frequency of daydream. Really a kind of factors that have to do with the child's ability to pay attention.
Moodiness, hyperactivity, emotional disturbances, and attention disorder are all potential signs of lead poisoning in young children. In older children, delinquency and learning disabilities are possible indications of lead in the blood. Severe symptoms of lead toxicity, clumsiness, fatigue, pallor, loss of appetite, loss of muscle coordination, weakness, abdominal pain, persistent vomiting, constipation, and loss of consciousness can be seen in children and adults.
I think it's very important to understand that lead, say, at the concentrations that we're seeing, even at very low concentrations, which are barely measurable, has the capability of irrevocably preparing that child for life. And I think this is absolutely, totally acceptable in the United States. One of the great tragedies as regards child health in the United States is that we have an enormous environmental problem with lead poisoning of children who live in urban communities. And unlike a variety of other problems that children are at risk for, there is no primary prevention of children with lead poisoning that I'm aware of anywhere in the United States. Is whatever exists for caring for children with lead poisoning is triggered when the child becomes poisoned. So the child has to become injured before anybody does any dial.
We know where lead is, we know what pathway of exposure are for children, and we know that the current level of exposure received by a large percentage of children are unacceptable. I think now attention is shifted to identifying where the lead before it gets to the children and trying to prevent the initial exposure rather than trying to limit the toxicity once exposure has occurred. Excess exposure to lead is an actual problem. It does occur more frequently in inner city areas. I think we blame parents for inadequate supervision or for allowing their children to get poisoned is simply a case of blaming the victim. The lead is there, we know where it is, and it's really society's responsibility to go and clean it up before it wreaks any more havoc. It's a full opportunity, toxic. It doesn't just affect lower class children. Middle class children are vulnerable as well.
If your child is sick from lead poisoning, chances are you are too. It's important to get medical attention away. Otherwise, you're risking serious health problems. In adults, symptoms of lead poisoning and toxicity can present themselves as a loss of libido, hypertension, infertility, miscarriage, kidney failure, and even damage to the central nervous system. The ideal blood lead level is, of course, 0. It's important for us to be informed about symptoms and dangers of lead poisoning. It's important to recognize lead poisoning as a growing national health hazard that affects all of us, young and old. It's also important that we realize proper treatment is available. Once treatment is started, it's essential that the source of lead is uncovered. Again, your local health department can help with soil and pH analysis and recommend ways for safe removal. The symptoms can be silent, but the dangers of lead poisoning are no secret.